Chair, there's so much to talk about, but let's kick off from that last story about Alice Guo. Of course, you've had to answer this a number of times, but the question there remains, how in the world did Alice Guo become a mayor in the Philippines?
Well, because under the decision of the Supreme Court in the case of Serafica versus the Commissioner election, the Supreme Court said that the duty of the Comelec is purely ministerial in accepting the certificates of candidacy. We cannot refuse. We do not have the discretion as to whether to accept or not to accept the certificates of candidacy. So long as the certificates are in proper form, it is duly notarized with the documentary stamp and signed by the filer or by the aspirant, then we will have to accept the certificate of candidacy. And if it has the so-called certificate of nomination and acceptance, we have to accept the certificates of candidacy. As to whether the name of the candidate will be included in the ballot, that is a different question altogether. We have to accept, but there is no duty on the part of the Comelec to immediately include the name of the candidate in the ballots. If somebody will file a petition to cancel or deny due course the candidacy, then we can cancel the candidacy if proven to be right, the petition, or we can motu proprio cancel the candidacy if the person is a nuisance candidate. Only in the case where the person is a nuisance candidate. But in the case where a person's qualification as to age, citizenship, residency, registration as a voter, and literacy is being questioned, then there should be a registered voter that must be filing a petition, not for the Comelec to motu proprio cancel the candidacy.
So, question po na the fact that, from what we understand, she also only registered as a voter in April 2021, about 6 months before she actually filed her candidacy. That in itself is also not a red flag?
That is not a red flag, because under the under Republic Act 8189, in Section 9, which is actually the continuing registration law, to be a registered voter, you must have 6 months residency before the election. So before the election,
she fulfilled that, kahit sakto.
Yes, before the election is actually, if you're going to run in 2025, that's November of 2024. In the case of Mayor Gu, she applied for registration in April of 2021, as you correctly pointed out, and nobody questioned, nobody opposed, nobody filed a petition against the application, and hence, her application was approved by the Election Registration Board of BARMM. Now, here comes October of 2021. So if she was able to register by April, take note that it's more than 1 year and 1 month before the election of 2022 of May. In October 2021, Alice Gu filed a petition, a certificate of candidacy for the position of Mayor of Bamban Tarlac. Nobody questioned, nobody filed a petition, nobody opposed the candidacy of Alice Gu. That's why she was able to run.
Pero sa kaso po ito, siya po ay natural born, tama po ba? Doon sa kanyang dokumento na hawak? Because local officials are allowed to be both naturalized
and natural born. If nobody will be filing a petition to question the candidacy of somebody or to cancel the candidacy of somebody, then we will be presuming under the law that that person is actually a citizen of the Philippines.
Pero ngayon po may complaint petition to cancel her birth certificate. May deadline po ba ang Department of Justice to decide on that? Pag nag-file si Alice Gu ng kanyang COC.
I think that the petition to cancel the birth certificate was actually filed before the regional trial court. As far as the Comelec is concerned, until and unless there is a final judgment as regards the criminal case or even the administrative case, then this is very clear. We will have to accept the certificate of candidacy of anybody, But as to whether the name will be included in the ballots, that's a different, again, question. In the case of the personality that you are mentioning, there are certain issues such as the Ombudsman's decision, which will be considered by the Commission on Elections. And in response to the Bamban Tarlac incident of 2022, that's why somebody was able to run with questionable nationality, the Comelec cannot do anything unless and until the law is amended. We will have to wait for the legislation. We cannot add documents to what is being required by the law. It needs legislation. Now, what the Comelec did actually is, in order to prevent that kind of situation, at least sa level lang po namin, we decided to include in the rules that we will publish all the certificates of candidacies
So
of
that
candidates.
is where that came from.
Yes. We will be filing the certificates of candidacies of all the candidates nationwide for the first time. So if there are 500,000 candidates nationwide, you're going to see that in our website.
Ipapublish po yun lahat.
Yes po. And
including having their addresses there.
yes, because the address is very important. It's required under Section 74 of the Omnibus Election Code. How can you prove that that person has been a resident of the place for at least 1 year immediately preceding the day of the election if we are not going to include the date, the address? And so for the people, the voters, to be able to fully know well the candidate, then the people must be apprised of who these candidates are. And the only way to do that is to publish the certificates of candidacy for the first time. But we are going to redact certain informations which are not necessary for purposes
Because
of
there's also
filing.
the
Katulad
privacy
po
law.
na.
Yes, for
Katulad
example,
po na.
the email address. That's not even required under the law. But we require the inclusion of the email address so that in case of notices to be sent to the candidates, then it will be very easy instead of sending it through courier or through...
And how many days do people have to protest any kind of information that is on the COC?
If a person's candidacy is to be questioned based on material misrepresentation in the certificate of candidacy, age, citizenship, residency, registration as a voter, and literacy, you have 5 days, but not more than 25 days from the date of the filing of the candidacy. And we are going to release the certificates of candidacy of all candidates in less than 2 weeks, so that's more or less 10 to 14 days only. So during that period, the people will know practically who are their candidates, the background of their
Saan po
candidates.
ito ipopost?
Sa Comelec website. Sa Comelec website po, we will going to do that for the first time. So if candidates would like to question that effort on the part of the Commission, then they are free to go to the Supreme Court and question. But we are going to do that not only under the principle of transparency, but because we would like the people to know who their candidates are. Para hindi naman sila nagugulat na lang somebody will be running who is not a Filipino citizen, somebody who is running who is not even a resident of the place, a complete stranger, or not even
This
of
is the
legal
first
age.
time that we're doing this
Yes.
way. Before, it used to be
Eh,
posted.
because when you file
on
your
paper.
candidacy, nobody will know the contents of your certificates of candidacy. And in fact, if somebody would like to file a petition to question the candidacy of a candidate, you will have to get a copy from the Commission on Election, a copy of the COC. Sometimes it's very difficult to get because our election officers will always invoke data privacy.
Yes, correct.
But now,
There's also that law.
but now we included it in the present rules.
All the way down
amendment-
to councilors, though,
Yes,
Chair?
yes,
Okay.
ma'am. So we included in our rules that if you are going to get the COC coming from the website and use that in the petition, that will be a valid document for purposes of completing the petition.
Let's talk about, since we're already talking about COCs, let's talk about preparations for the big midterm elections next year. 66 million registered voters is the last
So
count we
far,
have.
as of July 15, 66 million, but our projection actually is supposed to be 70 million, but we may have more or less roughly 68 million voters. The reason is because we discovered that there were about 5.37 million who were deactivated voters because they failed to vote in 2 consecutive elections. Under the law, failure to vote in 2 consecutive elections would mean deactivation
Yeah.
of your voter registration. And if you want to vote, then you should reactivate yourself as a voter. But 5.37 failed to reactivate, but we found out again that there were about 600,000, more or less, up to July 15, who were able to reactivate their registration. So meron pa tayong mga more or less po, 5 million pa rin na deactivated voters, and that will greatly reduce the number of voters. Tumaas na nga eh. Ngayon nga po, 3.4 million voters, more or less new voters, ang nagpa-register since February 12 up to July 15. But because of the 5.37, that will practically reduce the number of voters. So more or less 68 million.
More or less 68, and that's the highest ever.
That's the highest ever. Before, it's about 64 million only. So kung may 68 ka, more or less may 4 million. And we take note that we also have voters abroad. We have overseas voters, which is more or less 1,180,000.
Dahil po ba yan sa population growth, or is it reflective of how people are excited for the upcoming
The
midterms?
excitement is actually usually during the presidential and vice presidential election.
So parang wala naman pong sinasabi itong sinabi niyo 68 million.
Wala naman po. Yung pong 2022 elections, we we have more or less 83.5% voters turnout, the highest in the history of our country's election. But for a midterm election, the average is more or less 60 to 65% only.
Okay, Chairman, since we're on the topic of voters, voter registration ended today, September 30, ano? But will it be extended in some areas? I know in northern Luzon, naapektuhan po sila ng Typhoon Julian. So will
We were informed by some of our regional offices that they intended earlier to postpone and cancel and reset to another date the registration. But however, they said that they honestly believe that the number of voters, prospective voters who will be registering is not that many anymore, because even last Saturday, not very many were able to apply for registration. So they decided to proceed with the registration, and in Batanes only, there was this effort to suspend the voters' registration, but we were informed lately that they proceeded likewise. So more or less, the registration in the entire country proceeded and ended today, and therefore there will be no more and no extension of registration to any parts of the country.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask in relation to the number of voters that you're tracking. I wonder if you have any data on the number of candidates naman, in terms of the candidates. It strikes me as parang ang daming dynastic candidates this time around. Or is it the same? Roughly the same?
The
same
number of positions
families?
actually up for grab in the 2025 election is actually 18,280 positions. In 18,280 positions, you will have more or less 500,000 candidates nationwide for the different positions. Sa senators nga lang po, the average usually is about 60 to 70 candidates for 12 slots for the senators. But how about more the party list? You have more or less 162 party list organizations that will be grabbing for only one slot so that they can get to 2%. So when it comes to relationships, indeed, because we do not have yet the anti-political dynasty law in the country, they had been attempting to pass that kind of legislation, but they, unfortunately, until today, no such
It's
law.
languishing in Congress.
But in the Bangsamoro, they have attempted. They actually now have in the election code of the Bangsamoro, just recently passed, a provision which ban or which will prohibit the relationship of until the second degree of consanguinity and affinity in the members of the parliament.
That's in effect.
That's in effect right now.
So we don't know if there are more families running in next year's election than previous years.
Yes.
We don't have that kind of data
But
yet.
surely it will always increase as we go on with our elections. Surely the numbers should always be doubled, in fact, this election or even by the next election.
There are calls to suspend the BARMM parliamentary elections because Sulu effectively declared that it is not part of BARMM. Ano po mangyayari sa Sulu? Meron po bang changes in that area?
We would like to readily admit that we were so kulat po kami because of the decision of the Supreme Court. Hindi namin in-expect yun. So we had the entire day thinking it over. We were so puzzled, what are we going to do? And until we decided we will proceed with the election, simply because that is our mandate to conduct and administer election. And number two, that's our commitment under the peace process. And therefore, the Commission will proceed with the election. We are going to deduct the number of seats allocated for Sulu, which is actually 7 members of the parliament. Supposedly, there will be 80 members of the parliament in the Bangsamoro. But because of the 7 of representatives from
73
Sulu,
na lang.
73 na lang po. And the question is, that's the legal question is, can we proceed with 73 despite the law providing for 80? But our conclusion is, of course, yes. We are not mandated to fill up the entire 80, but we have to proceed with the 73 because at least all the provinces remaining in the Bangsamoro are still properly represented.
But in Sulu, the normal, regular local
in
elections
Sulu they will
will
have,
continue.
Yes, ma'am. They will have to elect for their Senate, so governor, vice governor, Sangguniang Panlalawigan, mayor, vice mayor, and Sangguniang Bayan. And therefore, the filing of the candidacies for these positions in Sulu will also be by October 1, tomorrow up to October 8. But in Sulu, in the Bangsamoro, we decided to reset the filing of the candidacy from October 1 to 8 to November 4 to 9. in order to give the proper transition in view of that decision in
Okay, punta naman po tayo sa EMBOs. What is the decision there? What has been decided on and what are we waiting for?
We have to understand that the 10 barangays originally are from
Makati.
and according to the Supreme Court, they rightfully belongs to Taguig. The Comelec in the barangay and SK elections, we transferred all the records of voters of the 10 barangays from Makati to Taguig, and therefore they were able to vote as residents voters of Taguig already. But in February of 2024, we issued a resolution saying that the voters of the 10 barangays can vote for senators, party list, mayor, vice mayor,
Councilor.
sangguniang panglungsod. Although at that time, we have no ordinance yet from Taguig saying that indeed the people of the 10 barangays can vote for sangguniang panlungsod. Lo and behold, 2 weeks ago, we received an act of the sangguniang panlungsod saying that 3 barangays of the original 10 barangays will be included in District 1, and the other 7 barangays will be
District
included in District 2 to constitute the new district for purposes of electing the sangguniang panlungsod. But there is still a problem. The problem actually is, where are they going to vote for? Are they going to vote for members of the Congress? So the sangguniang panlungsod does not have the power to do that. Only Congress can do that.
So wala pa pong desisyon.
But here comes Congress the other day.
Okay.
Yung
We
gamutik
reported
na,
on
alam mo
that
na,
Yung
too.
pinag-aawayan ni Senator Alan at ni
Yes.
Senator Migs.
We reported that too.
And
They
there
issued a resolution.
There was this concurrent resolution of Congress saying that whatever was done by the sangguniang panlungsod, which is 3 and 7, will have to be the same thing when it comes to the congressional seat and district. And so we issued a resolution the other day, and we will be issuing a resolution tomorrow, and this is an advance notice to everyone, that we will allow the 3 barangays of then Makati, now Taguig, to vote for the 1st district, and the 7 barangays for the 7th district, for the members of Congress, so that they will not be disenfranchised. Our own purpose here is there should be nobody that will be disenfranchised in our country.
Pero wala pong bagong distritong manilikha.
Wala po. If you are going to create a new district, there should be a law for the creation of this new district.
So it just follows the ordinance, right?
Yes, ma'am.
District 1, 3 barangays. District 2, 7 barangays.
So there needs to be a petition that will be filed in Congress for that to happen? Is that
No,
correct?
Wala na, they
the
voted.
Comelec already,
Comelec
the
has
Comelec will
voted.
be issuing tomorrow.
So that's
a
final.
resolution. That's final.
Okay.
Until somebody will go to the Supreme Court.
This is voted on by the UNBank, correct?
By the UNBank,
Okay, so it's
and-
going to be final.
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, funny enough, because we were just talking to Mayor Abibina on Friday, and she was upset nga that it's taken this long to decide on it because we're literally on the eve of the filing of COCs, and she was wondering bakit inantay hanggang ngayon, right? It should have been resolved like much earlier in the
Yes,
year.
ma'am. Because the Comelec has no power to do that. Only Congress can do that. And of course, we will not do anything if there is no act of Congress. In this case, the concurrent resolution. That's the sense of the Senate and the House of Representatives. And so, yun yung naging reason namin why we acted. But just providing that the 3 will belong to the 1st district and the 7, that's unconstitutional on the part of the Commission. Only Congress
You
can
have
do
not
that.
sat on this.
No, of course not.
Okay.
That's not within our power and jurisdiction. In fact, as early as February of 2024, we said we are awaiting for the law and we are awaiting for the act of the Sanggunian so that we can legally create and add to the members of the Sangguniang Panlungsod.
No more substitutions this year, Chair? Garcia?
Definitely. Even if there is no law, lakas loob namin ginawa, the Comelec will not allow any more withdrawal with substitution. You have to lay your cards on the table. You decided to run for public office, and yet you will be you will like the people to second guess. So once you file your candidacy mula from October 1 to 8, after October 8, if you want to withdraw your candidacy, no problem with us. We will accept your withdrawal, but we will no longer accept any substitution in case of withdrawal, except in case of death
Or disqualification. Ano yung grounds po for disqualification?
Disqualification based on Section 68 ng Omnibus Election Code, such as, for example, green card holder, violation of the violation of the code, like election offense cases, or yung lack of, or yung mga tinatawag nila na fugitive from justice.
So,
These
for
are
instance,
grounds.
Alice Go can file COC, but then if the decision by the ombudsman comes,
There was already a decision from the ombudsman. I was informed already, and we have to read the decision of the ombudsman because it would appear that there was this perpetual disqualification to hold public office.
kailan
And
Chair naman,
Kailan po
you-
lumabas
you-
yung
don't leave us hanging.
Yeah, but I was only informed this morning when the members of the media had been interviewing me, and I was informed that there was already a decision by the office of the ombudsman.
So,
And
so
You
perpetually
announced it-
disqualified.
according to and so we will have to read the decision. We have to find out if indeed there was this qualified to hold public office, because this means a lot. This would change practically everything.
Let's read the decision now.
Yeah.
Pwede ba?
I know already, but,
Mag-break na tayo.
it's up to our researchers to research on the final disposition
Chair
of the
Garcia
office of the
naman,
ombudsman.
you can break it with us. We're running out of time, but I needed to ask you about something else. Former Comelec Chair Bautista, of course, he's been indicted in the U.S. on by the federal jury on bribery charges. Do we know what's going on there?
Yes, ma'am. We were fully apprised by the US DOJ every now and then. We are in constant communication with the Philippine DOJ, because the Philippine DOJ is properly coordinating with the US DOJ. There is this mutual legal assistance treaty between the Philippines and the United States. The US invoked that treaty so that the Philippine DOJ requested us for certain documents and confirmation of certain facts which are necessary for purposes of the filing of the proper
Correct.
case in court. That's the only participation that the Comelec. When the investigators and the lawyers from the US DOJ requested for certain directors from our office to be interviewed, to be examined and investigated. So we fully participated. We provided these people so that they can talk to our people.
Do we know where he is?
We know, but it's not. We are not at liberty to disclose because, of course, the U.S. will always invoke the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty.
But, yeah, go ahead.
Chair, alam po natin na hinihigpitan natin ang social media AI use in the upcoming elections. We talked about it a lot. But I wanted to know, because the main dilemma here is how do you find the source? I mean, if there will be contentious posts, troll farm movements, paano po natin malalaman yun? And how do we hold these people accountable? Because uso yung mga troll farms, alam natin yan.
Yes.
Ngayon pa lang, ang dami na. But to be able to trace it to a certain candidate, that's a different challenge altogether.
Truly, this is the first time that the Comelec enacted a guidelines for purposes of regulating social media, regulating AI, the artificial intelligence, deepfakes, softfakes, and such other kinds of fakes in social media. We need to attempt such kind of initiative simply because we honestly believe by 2025 and then the next elections, it will now be campaigning through social media, and so we are attempting to regulate at least social media. We have to understand that there is no social media regulation law in the Philippines. Even in the United States, they are attempting to pass social media regulation, but they fail to do that because there's always this issue of violation of the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression. And that is the same thing also in the Philippines. But we honestly believe that when you file your candidacy, that's not an absolute right, it's a privilege. And that being the case, then you should be governed by the rules of...
May limit po ba ang promotion on social media?
Wala naman kaming binibigay na limit, but what we are saying is, if the post is not included or is not in the social media account of the candidate, of the political party, or the campaign staff, which is properly recorded to us, then we can easily ask. And we're going to enter into a MOA, and at the same time, we're going to, that's included in our guidelines, we're going to talk to the platform to immediately remove such posts. Eh, kasi ngayon, if there is no such exercise of power from the Comelec, and you request for the tanggalin yung post, it will take months. Eh, nasira ka na, nagamit na yung deepfakes, etc. So what we are trying to do is regulate, because we are regulating TV, radio, newspapers. We are saying
It's a
120 minutes, 90
Yeah.
minutes. You have to submit the contracts entered into by personalities, candidates, and then the expenditure we are properly monitoring. But how? Why
Pero yung
is it that...
problema po, Chair, is yung pag sinabi mong fake news, I mean, first of all, you have to prove.
And you have to fact check.
You have to fact check. Pero
Right.
yung iba kasi may mga innuendo lang eh. Ibig sabihin, you're gonna
I think
splice
that's
the
gonna
video.
be- I think that's gonna be
i-edit
harder
mo, you're gonna
to-
put, music.
It's like
But
the
you have,
guacamole
we have
game.
to understand also. Ganyan din naman yung argument nung
Yeah.
sa regular nating campaigning. I'm not the one who posted that campaign
yes,
material.
that's true.
Di naman ako yan eh, kalabang ko yan. Oh, kung ganun lagi, lagi silang ligtas.
Right.
What we did in the past, especially during the barangay and SK election, we said, okay, but we will just
Right.
presume
Right.
that these are your campaign materials, remove. Cost the removal. Yun lang naman
Right.
eh. So, kasi ma'am, kung sasabihin lagi nila that it's not their post, it's not their, then we cannot
They're washing
regulate-
their hands off
we
it.
cannot regulate
Sorry,
really.
Chair Garcia, we've run out of time, but I just need to ask this one last question, circling back to the case with former Chair Andy Bautista. Di ba nag-appeal po yung Smartmatic? Has there been a decision on that? Are they appealing against the ban?
Yeah, against the disqualification, it's
Yes.
still pending before the Supreme Court, and therefore we are proceeding with our preparation because we did
Okay.
not receive any restraining order from the Supreme Court. Lucky for us, no TRO.
For now, they're still disqualified. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
We're gonna have to leave that there for tonight. So sorry, we've run out of time, but there's so much more to talk about. Thank you so much for joining us on The Big Story tonight, Comelec Chair Attorney George Garcia.